Hey everybody, you're listening to the production channel. My name is Stephen Bowles and I got Clem Harrod with me. Hello, Clem.
What's going on, man? Chatter.
Hey, buddy. Not doing too bad. I was hanging out over at Epcot this weekend.
I saw you there. I saw you.
I know.
that was pretty random. That was exciting.
Out of all the tens of thousands of people that were getting their drink on, all of a sudden I see this tall dude walking towards me and I'm like, that is so Clem right there.
A smile on my face, hanging out with my wife, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law. It was great times, man. You got to love the Food and Wine Festival.
I know. Well, for anyone new who's listening, this is the production channel where we just kind of cover all topics production, anything from audio, video, lights, vendor, supplier, all things. We just kind of get together and try to capture those stories that are going on around the industry because I know it's very, very busy out there. And we don't always get a chance to catch up. So today I'm really, really excited to have Joe Mertz joining us today. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of background on Joe. He is the CEO of Mertz Productions and MertzCrew, of which we'll be covering both of those today. But really, he's got 15 years of experience producing his own shows through Mertz Productions, and then really before that was even just kind of freelancing for years before that. So I guess just 20 plus years total, which is awesome. That's the kind of stuff we like to bring in here. People who have seen this industry from really a lot of different sort of angles, right? Joe's been a freelancer. He's been a producer. He's also been now with MertzCrew, which is exciting, more on the vendor, supplier, and kind of just innovator, right? Really changing the way that we interact with this industry on the daily. And we're going to cover all that stuff in a little bit. But to get us going, Clem, real quick, give me your two sentence take on why it is that we're doing what we're doing.
The reason why you and I just wanted to start this thing up was because we travel so much. Our lives are just busy, crazy, but those friendships, those bonds, that information out there, when you're not in it all the time, or when you're not a part of the story, sometimes it's missed, and you want to just stay in the know. You want to stay in that bond with your fellow coworkers. You want to stay in the know of the industry, but you also want to make a difference in the industry. You also want to leave your mark. Or if somebody else is leaving their mark, you want to hear about it. You want to understand the greater good of the industry and what we're doing out here.
That's right, man. And that's honestly why we bring guys like Joe in, because they've done that in their own way already. And so we're excited about this. All right, so Joe, I'll actually go ahead and just kick off the first question. So Joe, how in the goodness gracious, how did you find this industry? Like, how did you actually get into the production industry?
That's a great question. I was actually going to college for engineering, mechanical engineering in Pennsylvania, and my summer job was a technician at a little theme park called Sesame Place. It was based on Sesame Street. It was a great summer job, fabulous, all teenage kids. And it was such a small park. You got to do some amazing things. I mean, some of my colleagues were writing shows, performing them. We really got to do some amazing production type stuff that you would really never get at that age to do at like a park like Disney World or, Epcot, where they have, full on production companies. So I was doing the engineering thing, and about halfway through I said, I really don't know if I can be an engineer. I want something a little more interesting, a little more exciting. And at that point I wanted to do film and TV. And I moved to Orlando because they were building soundstages, and Orlando seemed to be the up-and-coming film TV location. And then I moved down here, and I realized the above-the-line work all came from LA and New York. So I had to either move to LA or New York if I really wanted to be a producer in film and TV. So I started to look for alternatives, and that's when I discovered the live event industry. And my first real job in the industry was in the events department at Walt Disney World. I worked out of the building which was called Main Gate at the time. And I was a freelancer. I never actually had a full-time job there, but I would just pick up jobs on a project basis for for 2 years, I started with the Boy Scout Jamboree with them as a production assistant, and I finished my career there with the Super Bowl halftime show in 2000 as a production assistant. And at that point, I was like, it's time to move on, and I started freelancing and going out into the real world and trying to pick up some work with some other production companies besides one specific company.
Hold on now, you said you did get a chance to work on the Super Bowl halftime show?
I did, 2000. I did not know that. Yes, I was the production assistant for the Super Bowl halftime show number 34 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Who was the band?
It was multiple. That was for the towards the end of a huge theatrical production, but it was Christina Aguilera and Enrique Iglesias, Tony Braxton. They all had like a song in that, and it was a huge theatrical production. It wasn't just a band out there doing their music. It was, typical Disney, huge spectacle, hundreds of people and puppets and, pyro and flying. I mean, you should find it. It was pretty amazing. It was to celebrate their millennium, which they had a whole bunch of millennium projects, and this was kind of a commercial for their millennium projects that year.
I gotcha.
Wow.
I gotcha.
I love how this seems to be a running theme, Stephen, with people starting in Orlando and coming to Orlando. Like, what was that like? How old were you when you just decided, you know what, I just want to get up and move. I'm going to go to Orlando because they seem like they have some stuff going on down there. What did that process entail for you?
Yeah, I was 22 years old. I had just graduated college with an engineering degree, and my parents were like, "What do you mean you're not going to go get an engineering job?"
What did we just pay for?
Exactly. So, I packed up my car. It was a Chevy Corsica. I filled it up with everything that I had. I actually had no bed. I slept on the floor for a year and a half. But I had a couple of friends who all worked at Sesame Place with me. One guy was going to go to school down there. Another guy had a job at the Magic Kingdom. We had another guy that was already there. So I had a little bit of a support structure. It wasn't like it was just totally wide open and open-ended. It was nice to have some friends to come down to, and we shared a house, help pay the rent together. But it was just all of us kind of in the same area trying to figure it out. And it's funny, the number of people, we actually had a party once of all the old Sesame people that, had left Sesame and come down to Disney and moved on to bigger and better things. It was cool. But so I had a little bit of a friendly support structure down here, but it was still, unnerving. I didn't have a lot of money in my pocket. I just spent, money for college. My first job was at the Rainforest Cafe, and then eventually the Planet Hollywood. I used to be the door host there. So, you just
with
picked
the
up
smile
whatever.
in the hair. I can see you greeting people.
Exactly. But you picked up whatever work you could get, to pay the bills until, the first opportunity to work with Disney World finally came through.
Now, you talk about bigger and better things. Like when we were first introduced, it was through, a payroll company. I was freelancing for LMG, and, I had to send my invoices over to MertzCrew. And how did that come about? How did the whole MertzCrew and Mertz Consulting, the difference? How did that come about?
That's an awesome story. I was freelancing, so after I had kind of moved on from Disney and started, producing some of my own shows, freelancing for some other folks. I was actually on a show as a stage manager, and the audio engineer there was a guy named Louis Hall, who I still work with today.
Louis,
yes,
I love Louis.
Louis is a fabulous guy. We were sitting there at lunch, and he was just complaining that the company that was processing his payment through LMG that year was they couldn't really explain his paycheck. He was getting like a mixed rate. They didn't know how to do, full 10-hour days. So they were trying to combine 8 hours into 2 hours, and they just didn't get our industry at all. And the crux of it was he had gotten his paycheck, and they had taken a chunk of money out of his paycheck, and they couldn't explain why. They just basically said, "We overpaid you." You know what I mean? And he was like, so I felt for him. I'm like, that's terrible. You should know how much money you're getting paid. You shouldn't have to, it's just silly that this is the kind of you have to go through. And he said, well, I have to have the insurances in order to do this. And I said, well, we have that. Can you just run it through us and we'll process it for you, and then you can get paid your full rate. And he looked at me and he's like, you do that? And I said, absolutely. It's not hard. Let's just figure it out. So we talked to LMG. He said, yeah, they're willing to do it as long as you have the right paperwork. They're fine with it. I said, okay, well, here's the fee we can do that for. And they said, okay, fine. And we did it. Well, Louis had kind of talked to a couple other people, and 4 guys all came over at that first time and said, hey, I'd like to do that too. So we had like the original 4 guys that were all willing to process that.
That's cool.
And it was me and my wife. I was running the Mertz production side, and my wife was actually just handling the processing of all the LMG guys, for a couple of them, in our home office at our, first house. And then by the end of that year, we were probably like 35 guys. They'd all started, just moving on and saying, I'd rather do this than that. And they all voluntarily joined us. And then by the end of that year, the general manager at LMG basically said, could you do everybody if we just, told them to do you? And we said, absolutely. So that was kind of the impetus of, picking on a full-time client, specifically running everything through us and processing for them.
Were you nervous about that, like to take on that task?
No, I mean, it was just more of the same of what we were doing, and it didn't seem difficult to me, and I got the industry. Like, I understood what we were doing. So we just started to implement tools to kind of make it easier. I created an Excel spreadsheet that calculated hours properly, and
I remember
we just started.
Oh, dude, it had some crazy formulas in there.
It was,
and everything was locked so you couldn't mess it up.
Right. Only type in the green cells.
Exactly. But we, and the guys liked it because, it was clear, it was simple. It showed them right there how much they were going to get paid. That's how much their paycheck was. We just simplified that process for them. And everybody seemed to like it. And so no, it wasn't scary. I did at that point say I need to fire my wife because she's not going to be able to handle that much.
Hold on, fire her or ask her to step down. Come on.
Asked her to. I moved her. I transitioned her to a new role. And,
there you go.
And we got Alexia on board as our full timer, and she's been with us ever since. And we kind of just increased our operating expenses to help manage the amount of people that were coming on board.
Nice.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember freelancing as well and getting the merch. My first introduction to you was through some just like logo at the upper left corner of an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, who is this guy?
That's great.
It's interesting you say that that basically came about because not only because just you and Louie and the problem there that you guys were solving, but having a big first client like like an organization like an LMG or any other production company. I had the same thing when we started my first company. I started Eastgate Productions with a buddy, and we started it by having one client out the door who was on retainer for like $25,000 a month or whatever it was. But it's a lot easier to start up a new business when you've got that sort of big contract right out the gate, as opposed to building it one at a time, which is essentially what you were able to accomplish with LMG there at the end of the year, it sounds like. Yeah,
it was amazing. I mean, in fact, when he brought me in, I had no idea that's where he was going with the meeting. And he finally just was like, can you do all of these? And it was like, what a nice surprise. But yeah, absolutely.
That's cool, man. So then along the way, you're producing your own shows, right? I mean, basically you have moved from more of an individual kind of show tech or whatever it is, or even just stage manager, to more of Mertz Productions. Tell us about that. Like, what kind of events were you actually producing?
Yeah, I'd started with, we do a Halloween event for a local theme park. We've been doing that since 2001. And then we've got some existing corporate clients, and we just started to grow that. And I was kind of doing both. I was freelancing for some other people, and I was producing my own shows. And it got to a point where the time commitment to freelance for other people was starting to impede on the clients that I had. So I had to just kind of make a personal decision. Hey, no more freelancing. We're just going to focus on our clients and our clientele and go after really nail those projects. So we've been continuing to do the Halloween event for 16 years. This was our 16th year producing that event. We've got several corporate clients that we've had for multiple years, and we've had slow growth that way, but we tend to, when we pick up a client, they're very happy with our progress and the way we do things, and we've continued to just maintain that clientele. So that's kind of the slow and steady growth that I've focused on with Mertz Productions, is just really take care of the clients we have and make them want to continue to use us and not want to go anywhere else. And that's what we've been able to do. And we've even moved on. Now we do some cruise line entertainment. So we've got theme parks, cruise lines, and corporate events as our kind of our playbook of stuff that we produce.
That's awesome. Are you doing more just creative and stage management, or are you renting gear? Kind of like what you're offering to them?
My key demographic is those clients that don't have any type of production. We pick those clients up. A lot of our corporate clients, we kind of get them as they're growing out of hotel AV, and they're getting frustrated with the lack of creative design or even just design for what they're accomplishing. For years, they've just basically said, we need this equipment. And then, of course, the hotels can provide that. They grow beyond that to where they want to do things. We want to do this, we want to do that, but they have no idea how to do that. You know what I mean? We want to do more creative, or we want to do a morning talk show, and you really can't get that from hotel AV. You got to tell them what you need in order to produce that. So those are the types of clients we've gotten, is just people who don't have those capabilities or within in-house. And like I try to tell my clients, you guys focus on the content of what you want to say. We'll make sure it's heard and comes across to everybody in the audience. I can't sell jeans, or I can't, sell timeshares, or whoever the client is, but we can make sure everybody in that room hears the message that you guys are saying, and it's conveyed to them, and then they can go out and sell. And that's the value we try to offer.
Well, really, it's that switch from a client. You're right. With hotel AV, you're more so dictating to them what you need, right? I need, basic lectern with a microphone, and I want one, screen with a whatever.
Exactly.
PowerPoint, graphic computer. But once you get to that next level, really the client they're more in a position where they want to be told what they can do or how they could do what it is that's in their head. And that's just kind of never going to happen on the hotel AV side.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, it's the difference between saying, I can order cameras and lights and, and audio equipment, but that doesn't mean you can make a movie out of it, and especially a successful movie. Anybody can get the equipment, but it's the way it's all put together and put together to package that stuff into a live event or a movie or a TV show. That's what production is.
That's cool. I actually was on, so for anyone who's listening, I actually came up with show flow on a Mertz show down. I want to say it was like in Naples or maybe Key Biscayne. I don't even know where.
It was the Ritz. Yeah, it was the Ritz-Carlton, Key Biscayne. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, you guys always your clients, man. You picked the right ones. You guys picked the good hotels. But yeah, and I remember being backstage, and I tell this story almost in every demo that I do with people who are interested in show flow, as far as kind of backstory or whatever. But I'm always like, yeah, I was on, I'm from the industry, live video director, and I was on a show site, and the producer or whatever, maybe it was Liesel, I don't know, came over and dropped a new version of a production cue sheet or a show flow on my switching desk, and I had to sit there and go, all right, am I going to transfer all my notes from my old one to my new one? Or am I going to fork essentially from whatever you've got and keep my old version, but just kind of make annotations of the different? And I was like, that right there is the very reason, that we went after show flow. But I remember being on show site and telling, I think Sandy was on comm. He was your show caller. And I remember popping on comm and be like, if this existed, do you think this would be a good idea? And basically took a survey of everybody right there on comm. And then spent some time backstage rendering out in Photoshop or like in Keynote, I forget what it was, some ideas of it, and just running out to the front of house to you and to Sandy and just kind of pitching it to you guys throughout the week. So anyways, yep. I have a very close connection between Mertz production shows and everything that I do right now.
I believe on that show too. I think we had printed the show flows, and by the time Liesel had walked it back to you, I think we already had a change. So I think the very first thing we did was go, okay, change number 32. Like, it was the very first thing we did. It was amazing.
Nice. Now, Joe, with all the changes in your lives, in your life with the production and then the Mertz crew, how do you just manage that family time now? What do you do to stay grounded to home and your kids and stuff like that?
Yeah, it started early on. I remember when I worked out of the house before we actually had an office and, and other employees. I used to work all the time, you know what I mean? And then my daughter was born, and she would come to the office and stick her little toes under my office and want to get me to come out and play. And of course, how do you not, stop what you're doing and go play with her for a little bit?
Yeah.
But the first rule we came up with, my wife and I said, you know what? I said, if you can give me the time in the office, to leave me alone, keep the kids, from distracting me, I'll work until 6 o'clock as much as possible, get everything I can possibly get done, and then I'll carve that out as, when 6 o'clock comes, I'm done working, and I'll go, it'll be family time at that point. And that was kind of the first rule we came up with to try and come up with a good delineator between family time and work time. And it's still hard now. I mean, your phones and your devices and everything is connected, but I try to mentally check out of work at 6, and then at that point, it's just emergency stuff. It's just things that must be taken care of. But if it can wait till tomorrow during business hours, that's what I try to do, and try to mentally say, you know what, let me have the time with the family, because that's what most people do. They're done their job and they go home and they're all finished. And they can work on it the next day. And so you have to mentally tell yourself, this is family time. This is when I'm going to spend time with my family and stop working. And, cause I could work 24/7 if I wanted to, especially in this industry. It's fun. So it's, sometimes it's not even a pain. You like it. You want to do it. Mm-hmm. But you have to mentally tell yourself, all right, this is where the line is. I'm only going to do emergency stuff or client facing stuff or stuff that could damage the relationship with the client. That's the only stuff I kind of worry about after hours.
I know it's really hard in this industry because, for working from show to show as a tech, it's like you just sometimes people get caught chasing that dollar. And I know, Steven, you had mentioned before how you had your budget, what number you had to reach by the end of the year. And once you reach that number, then you would kind of taper off. And I wonder if a lot of people do that, if a lot of people truly establish a budget and understand what their operation costs are for the year, to then take the work accordingly so that they can have a life and think about their families and stuff like that.
Well, I think it does. I mean, the interesting thing with Joe here is actually you're a blend of both travel, right, for shows with Mertz Productions, but then you got MertzCrew, which is a little bit more of probably a regular sort of business hour job. And like for me, speaking from show flow, I remember when I used to travel all the time, it was fun, but it also was exhausting and it takes a toll on your personal life in terms of figuring out how to like find the norm and all that volatility. But with show flow now, I literally come in, work from, 8 to 6. Now I'm working 1,000% of my, brain is on it. But then when I'm done, I come home. I wonder for you, Joe, how do you handle that? Because you basically might travel for a show, be on show side, have crazy odd hours. But then if you travel back on a Tuesday, that doesn't necessarily mean that you get to take the rest of the week off. You still got to go into the office on Wednesday and either work on MertzCrew or at minimum just do normal producing sort of management roles that you have to do for the next show. So back to you, how do you handle all of that?
Yeah, how do you do both?
Well, the same way I try to compartmentalize the business hours, I also then, when I'm on a show that's a long run or a decent amount of time, I try to then tell, like, the kids will, especially if I'm traveling a lot, the kids are just, oh, don't go, and they, it really takes a toll on them. But then we try to have family time. We try to travel together, or we go visit family, or we go on a vacation, or we go on a cruise, and I try to explain to them, we get a good quality amount of time together, then when we can spend time together. If I can get a day off from the office and surprise them, or I can come home early, I'll try to do that. But it's just mentally compartmentalizing when you're working and then when you're not working to really try. And honestly, my favorite time is when I have a Saturday is to take my girls to dance class, and they're there for about 4 or 5 hours. I bring in a chair, I sit down, and I get to change their shoes, and I just love it, just hanging out there, being there. And my wife's like, "You're nuts, she can't sit for anything, it'll drive her crazy." But I'm like, it's just my time to be with them, be with their friends, and I just soak it up and enjoy it. Whenever I get those moments with them, I just try to make the best of it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, so I got a question for you. Let's talk a little bit more about like MertzCrew. I know that we talked about it sort of infancy and how it got started and how it really kind of grew into something where you were more so servicing one particular organization, which was a large one, but so it kind of touched a certain circle of freelancers. But since then, you've really kind of grown that into more of a mature offering for the greater industry. I guess just go ahead and tell us, what is MertzCrew today? What's that look like? What's your infrastructure like there? And how are you sort of bringing that to the industry on the daily now?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it came from, a need, an existing need that was out there. And I feel like the big benefit we offer is we work the way the industry works. Everything else that's kind of, I would consider a competitor of ours, they're always trying to force the industry into other areas and trying to make things work. Like I said, the original company we took the business from, that's what they were doing, trying to make our industry work in an environment it didn't really work, and you had frustrated contractors like Louis. So we continue to focus on the rental and staging arena. We really focus on the contracting and payment side. I think that is the primary piece that we own, and really nobody has been able to capture the way that we have. And then since then, we've started to kind of grow the other side of it. My end goal with MertzCrew is we want to be a software platform that really handles your personnel and your labor on a show site from the beginning of when you need that role all the way to the end when the guy gets paid. And that doesn't matter whether he's an employee, contractor, third-party contract, or staffing company. We want you guys to see MertzCrew as, I need a lighting designer on this project, and we're going to handle that from the beginning to the end. So we've taken the back end, which I think we've owned for a while, and we're now growing into the scheduling side, alerting crew. So my end goal is you just look at your phone and you know exactly where you're working the next day and what needs to happen because it's in your calendar. And then if there's updates, the schedulers can update that information, and your schedule just automatically updates right there on your device. So that's the vision and the end goal. We really want to help rental and staging companies. I think there's a lot of companies out there, software companies, that focus on the equipment and managing the equipment and where the equipment needs to be, and they're dabbling in the personnel side, but I think we do it better, and we're really trying to focus on helping you manage your personnel for a project or an event in rental and staging. We want to own that.
And I can appreciate that. As watching your company and your platform and your ideas grow, I love the website and having that profile on there and just being able to say what my skills are, having that rate set on there, and then being able to list the jobs or see the list of jobs that are available. But then I've also had people contact me saying, hey, I saw your profile on MertzCrew, wanted to check up and see if you were available these dates. It's definitely made it more user-friendly and a person-friendly, because people aren't gear. And I'm just totally against the idea of people just being shipped around like gear. But to see that option and to be contacted and the way that it all works together has been, I've appreciated the way that everything's grown. I wanted to say that.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I truly look at it that way. I don't, I have all these guys are freelancers. So to me, they're all individual businesses, and they're selling what they do, and I can appreciate the guy who's really good at his job, but he's not very good at selling himself or getting his invoice out to get paid or managing his payment procedure. He just wants to be a video switcher because he's good at that. I mean, we have some guys that are so good at running a spider system, but we can't get an invoice from them via email, know what I mean? Because they're just so into what they do. And so that's what we want to become. We want to be that platform for these guys to continue to be the best spider operator they are, and then they can just get paid, you know, and they can do their gig and show up to, you know, the project, do a great job managing the spider operator, and the rest of it is really as simple as possible. And then they get their their check, you know, in a timely manner, and they get paid, and they have a guarantee that they're going to get paid, and I don't have to worry about, is this a producer that's going to stiff me on my pay or anything like that, or what are the terms of the deal? You know, so many times when I was freelancing, I started to come up with a deal memo because I thought a day rate meant this and they thought a day rate meant that, and neither of them were really malicious. It was just a nomenclature thing. So we settle that now. It's clear in your contract. This is what you're going to get paid. This is how you're going to get paid. And you can either accept it or reject it. And if, you know, you have that right to say, no, I'm not going to do that because you guys have adjusted the payments differently. And that's all on the front end. It's all before you do the work. It's such a bitter pill when after you do this project, you worked your butt off, and then you find out they meant a day rate meant no overtime. You know what I mean? And you worked 4 16-hour days. You know what I mean? And those kinds of things are what we want to avoid. We want to settle all that stuff up on the front end so it's clear how you're getting paid. That's all up, and then everybody walks away happy. You know, you were happy with the rate you did. You got paid the way you expected to get paid. The amount of money there was, and then it shows up, you know, in your paycheck or in your bank account in a timely manner that it was expected to be there. So we just want to settle all of that stuff so that there isn't this negativity. And trust me, I knew as a producer, and I've hired other freelancers, you know, there's some guys who've been stiff. There's some negative people out there. You see on LinkedIn, you know, chat rooms, people trying to kind of cover, hey, I never heard of this company. You know, do I have to worry about these types of things? These are real problems the guys have to worry about. And some of them, you know, it's, you know, they're looking for that next payment as soon as possible. So to take away and give some peace of mind and some opportunities for these guys, I love that. I would love to continue to grow MertzCrew, to give these people that I love this industry. I have great camaraderie with most everybody in the industry, and to be able to provide some peace of mind for them that they can just go do their job and feel solid that their payment's going to be there and they know what they're going to get paid. Those are all wins for us at MertzCrew.
Now, I have a question in regards to that. If I'm a freelancer, right, and I've been requested to work on a show by a company, they've reached out to me, can I say that, okay, I'll do your job, but I get paid through MertzCrew?
Absolutely, and we have guys that do that. Yep, that's a little bit more. It's not as easy of a process as it is for companies that come to us and say, "Hey, we want to pay everybody through MertzCrew," but we can certainly do that, and we actually have that in our pipeline. Of, you know, we could get to a point where a contractor's payment platform is just MertzCrew, and he does all of his invoicing through MertzCrew regardless of who the client is. So those are all the types of things we're looking towards the future for.
I have a question for you. How you mentioned, you know, that the production company wants to hire a great spider op. How do they know that just because they're in your database that they're worth hiring in the first place? Or is there any sort of qualifying that goes on in?
The qualifying is all on the department side. So, you know, if a company wants to hire a spider operator, they can certainly broadcast and say, hey, I'm looking for a spider operator, and they can limit, they only want it in a 25-mile radius of this particular city, or they can open it up to the whole database. And then guys will propose or bid on it, basically. I can do that for this much money. And they can see on their profile if they've done that job or not. But we give them their email address and their phone number. So you can call. So Steven, if you put in for, you know, a video director job with a company that's never worked with you before, they'll have access to your resume and your phone number, and they can pick up the phone and chat with you and say, hey, have you done this? What gear have you worked on? What companies have you worked for? So we give them a little bit of data, but ultimately they still have the opportunity to pick up the phone, talk to the contractor directly, vet them personally before they make any kind of movement. And we're not eliminating I don't think we're getting to the point where it's like Uber, where you just get a video director and the one that's available shows up. I mean, it would be nice to get to that point, but the skill set's a little bit more involved than driving a car. You know what I mean? So it would be nice to get that, but most people, we're kind of eliminating, hey, I've gone through my 5 guys that I have that are spider operators, none of them are available. And what do most people do at that point? They start asking for referrals from somebody. Hey, can you refer me to a spider operator that you might know? And that, you know, this allows them at least to open up the arena to say, hey, maybe there's somebody else out there that I don't know, but you still got to vet them. You still want to check their references and their resume, and just have a chat with them just to get the personality correct.
Two questions. I noticed on the site that there is a like a star system. How are those rated? And then also, do people have access to see some of your show history, your old shows that are on your site as well?
Yeah, you can only see show history of the client if it's within a company that you've worked with. So you have, and we try to, there's some concern, and validly, some companies don't want their contractors that they've vetted to be available to the rest of the world that might be their competitor. So they have ability to build a fence around their contractors that nobody has access to, which is fine. We can do that. But if you have a contractor who's joined publicly, you know what I mean, and they're available to the public, and they've come to the site, their own way, then they're available to the rest of it. If they're open to other companies, you can see what jobs they have done or what roles they have done and what they were rated on those roles, but you can't see what show it was. Because we don't want to allow other rental and staging companies to know those shows exist to try and poach, a potential show from another client. So that's the reasons for those types of protections. But you can see the guy was a spider operator 5 times and he got a 4.7 rating on those 5 times. That's a pretty good indicator that he's probably a pretty good spider operator. You know what I mean?
Now, like Uber, when you complete a ride, you have to give a rating. So do companies actually, is there a forced rating system for you, or do people just have the option to rate technicians?
Yes, we have it is forced, but the default is a 4-star. So if there's a company that kind of doesn't want to deal with the rating system, or it's too long or tedious, the 4 is kind of the average or the go-to. And then what we're giving them is the opportunity, basically, do you want to adjust the 4? We assume everybody on a level playing field, if you have nothing to say about them, they're all 4-star roles. But say a guy did an extra, amazing job, and you really want to give him something else, then they have the opportunity to bump him up to 5 stars. Or if they were somebody that you really want to call out that we had a problem with him and you want to let the other schedulers and the other people know, then you have the opportunity to knock them down. So there's a lot of guys who are frustrated with the 4-star, but I would say, the 4-star is a good thing. It means you did your gig. They're willing to use you again. There's nothing negative that's really happened. And you should be proud of that.
I love it. I love that, Joe, what you guys are basically doing is defining, or at least taking the first swing at sort of defining some of these new rules and ways that the industry can sort of assess, right? Whether it's that, that's great. It's not exactly that it's perfect. It's more that someone's got a thought around it and you guys are implementing it, and then you'll learn, right? That software, you'll run it out there. You'll see how the sort of, collective industry responds to it. And then you build off of that. And I like any aspect of software that has that more user contribution side to it, where the community is able to sort of source and define those stars, define those reviews, define those things. I think that's generally something that's for the better and not for the worse. So that's cool stuff, man.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had some people who are a little nervous about it, and I get that. I know that there are other, some of those equipment softwares, they have rating systems as well, but they're closed. What I kind of like about ours is you get to see some response. You know what I mean? If you consistently are getting 3 stars, you got to take that and go, wait a minute, what, is there something I'm not doing, something I have to pay attention to, something's not right here. Maybe I need to self-reflect and take a look and see what's going on, or reach out and try to find out what you can do better. So I agree. I think it's all good stuff that allows people to continue to grow and get better at their skill set.
Well, for anybody who's interested, you can learn more at MertzCrew, MERTZ crew.com. They got videos and they got contact. You can get a hold of Joe, and then I think Gabe, right? Gabe's the other contact there for MertzCrew. Joe, we got to wrap, buddy, but thank you. This was awesome.
No, my pleasure. It was great talking to you guys.
Just in general, for everybody out there, please, if you know of anybody else that would be a great candidate, someone to have onto the production channel, even if it's yourself, if you got great stories about kind of what your side of the industry looks like, that's what we're doing here. We want to bring these stories to the industry. So with that, thanks Joe, thanks Clem, I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next week on the production channel.
Chatter.